Good morning, folks. Welcome aboard the Triumphant. Real quickly here before we get too far away, just a few things of safety. We are a Coast Guard licensed and inspected vessel, therefore you have all the safety and firefighting equipment on board. Life jackets are located downstairs inside of the main cabin. Underneath all the blue bench seating, they go on just like a vest and they fasten in the front. We have life rafts located on the upper deck all the way out. They're designed to float freely if needed. We also have fire extinguishers and life rings located throughout the vessel. We do have restrooms on board. They're located on the main deck all the way out there to the starboard side, which is the right hand side of the boat, and one on the port side. If something happens to be wrong with one of the restrooms, just gonna let one of our crew members know. And just also remember, folks, that we are on a boat and we may rock and roll a bit, especially if we come across another boat's wake. So just please remember, always safety first. Please hold on to the handrails, watch your footing going up and down the stairs and in out the doorways. Also remember that there's absolutely no running, climbing, or jumping out on board at any time. And the last thing we want is for anybody to fall down and get hurt. If anybody should have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Other than that, sit back, relax, make yourselves comfortable, and once again, welcome aboard.
If you're going to the stores, more than likely it came right through our terminals. Between us and the Port of LA, we handle almost 50% of the entire nation's cargo. So we are two separate ports. A lot of people think we might be the same port because we are next door neighbors. You'll see a little bit of Port of LA actually along the tour. But we are two separate agencies for two different cities. So that being said, we are a city department. We are a little different from other city departments in the sense that we don't use any tax dollars to operate. So any tax dollars, we're not using any of them for our operations. We generate our own money through leases. So we're a landlord, same way as you pay rent to your landlord. For supply chain optimization. So some of you folks may remember in the news, I think about a year ago now, we had a congestion issue. So it was a culmination of quite a few factors, but at one point we had over 20 ships waiting in line to get into both of our ports. So both ports had to come together and establish a more streamlined process. And that's because, again, I mentioned the big ships, this era of new big ships. That was the main factor in that congestion. So you can imagine unloading an 8 to 10,000 TEU ship, a 20-foot equivalent unit. That's the industry jargon for the containers right there. And then going up to 14,000, 16,000. We just got an 18,000 TEU ship in February. So you can imagine the updates in the process that needed to happen to unload these bigger ships. So it's just an issue of catching up, but we were able to relieve that congestion within 6 weeks. So up here we come into our Pier G, and this is where we can get an up close shot of this ship right here. So if you are interested in taking pictures, get ready for that. But this terminal is very important to the Port of Long Beach because right here straight ahead It was the first terminal to be shore power ready. So that's another initiative that we've taken on that has been able to reduce emissions by quite a bit. So when a ship comes in, it takes about 3 to 4 days to unload and load. And while they're unloading and loading, they have a crew on board that still requires power. So they would leave their engines running for those 3 to 4 days while they were here, the ship. So with shore power, the ship plugs into landside electricity and runs on electricity versus their engines, virtually reducing their emissions to almost 0%. So this is the first terminal to be shore power ready. It costs quite a bit to retrofit not only the terminal, but to also retrofit the ships. It's about $1 million just to retrofit a ship to be able to plug in. As you can imagine, not every shipping line can do that to their entire fleet. So we have invested in alternative technologies. So one of that, our technology advancement program, an outcome of that was the air AMEX. So essentially it's a stack, filter that goes on top of the stack and filters out the emissions before it hits the air. So that's an alternative technology that a shipping line can use if they don't have the money to retrofit all of their ships. So that was actually just successfully passed all the testing this year. Question. These cranes right here, how much of it is just pure, auto computerized, or how much of it is the actual operator? So these older cranes here, it depends much more on the operator. We'll see Middle Harbor, our newer project, where we have the most advanced cranes, which still requires an operator, but it's a lot more auto. So the newer cranes, a lot more of automation, but these older ones still require user mobility or interfacing with it. And please feel free to come up here and take pictures. This area is open to anyone that wants to come and stand up here. Don't be shy. So I mentioned a 20-foot equivalent unit, and you look at these boxes and you think, no, that looks a lot longer than 20 feet. And you're absolutely right. Most of them are 40-foot equivalent units. So for those, and that's the standard. Most of them are 40 feet. So each one of those actually counts for two units. So you can see right here the glass box that the crane operators sit in. And essentially, it's almost like operating a joystick, like that game, the claw game that you would play maybe at a pizza parlor or something like that, Chuck E. Cheese. That's essentially what they're doing, just at a way more advanced level. And I mentioned the ILWU, and there are a lot of parties that work together at the port. So like I said, we're just the landlord, so we don't manage the ILWU. That's the Pacific Maritime Association. So we have a lot of different players, and we also have rail, then we have trucking. So we have a lot of different entities, and we have to all come together to make sure that this operation is as efficient as possible and as streamlined as possible, so we can get the strategy that goes into place. With all these containers, you see them sorted, and as they're getting unloaded, you have to imagine they just don't unload them and put them wherever. There's a strategy that goes into that, because some of these containers are going to get loaded onto a rail, some of them are going to go onto a truck, some of them are going to go all the way out to Chicago, Midwest area, some of them are going to go right here to Arizona, or maybe straight to the Inland Empire. So there's an extremely strategic process when you're loading these ships and unloading these ships. And also you have to factor in the weight of these containers. There's a lot that goes into play in loading and unloading ships. So speaking of the Inland Empire Distribution Center, so that's another reason the Port of Long Beach is so competitive. Anyone here familiar with Inland Empire? Huge warehousing system out there. And that's one of the reasons we're so competitive. That's the largest warehousing distribution area outside of a port in the United States, and we have that right here. So that's another reason why we're so competitive. The port, the way we spend our money is by investing it right back into our infrastructure. So we're investing the most out of any port right now. We have a 10-year infrastructure update plan. We're about halfway through that. And that's because if we don't remain ahead of the curve, then we can easily lose that business to Mexico or to Canada. An example of what used to be a major player in the shipping industry and didn't update its facilities is the Panama Canal. So when it first opened up about a century ago, it was considered a very big deal. The 8th wonder of the world, changed the shipping world. They didn't update their facilities though. So now they just did open the expansion, just opened up about 2 weeks ago. Even with that expansion, the biggest ship they can accommodate is a 14,000 container ship. Like I said, there are ships that are already 18,000 containers. We're getting them here in Long Beach already. Ships are being built right now to carry over 20,000 containers. So back in 2012, we got the Beatrice. It was an MSC Beatrice ship. That one had about 14,000 containers, and that was a huge deal, 2012. A few years later, 18,000. So you can see how fast they're growing. Before that, a 10,000 container ship was a big deal, you know, just about 8 years ago. So these ships are getting bigger and bigger, and you have to remain competitive. You have to have your infrastructure ready to accept those, or else you're not going to be relevant in the industry anymore. So that's why we do invest heavily in updating, and this terminal is a result of that. So all of this right here that you see used to be all water. Essentially, most of the port is man-made. Everything we've seen so far is man-made. So what you do is you take contaminated sediment, clean it out, and then use it to build new land. Most advanced and greenest terminal of its kind in the United States. Most efficient as well. Port of LA has a terminal similar to this, but they don't have the capacity that this one does. And the reason that this terminal is so advanced, number one, are these new cranes. So these cranes have the capacity to carry two of these containers at once. And these are a little bit more automated. They don't require as much, they're still somewhat up there operating them, but they're so advanced that they really do work a little bit more on their own than the other cranes. And this facility right here was built to be able to accommodate those over 20,000 container unit ships. So you can see the sorting cranes right here working, going back and forth. You can see, oh, we just missed it. We might be able to see one, an automated guided vehicle. So you hear about no-man zones in certain warehouses, right, where everything's just working on sensors, on software. That's what we have going on here. So you can see these, just keep your eye out. We might be able to see one. You can see it's just looks like a big chassis essentially, just moving around on its own, completely on sensors, and they just all go around each other. It's a pretty cool thing to see. It's like you're watching the future already, right? Is at full capacity, it's going to be able to process just over 3 million containers. Just under 3.5. So to put that in perspective, we are the second busiest port, like I said. LA is number 1, New York, New Jersey is 3rd. This terminal alone would be 4th. So that's how advanced and how much capacity this terminal will have. And that is because of the new technology. So these ships, they don't go from point A, let's just, say China, most of our ships can come from China, then come over to point B, completely unloaded and leave. It's all of constant unloading, loading. Canada, so it's never just an A to B stop. They're making a few stops. So when we got that 18,000 TEU ship in February, we processed about 11,000 of those 18,000 containers. Here, this is one of our oil tanker facilities, so this is where you'll see our super oil tankers. We don't have one there right now, but they come like over here and unload. And this oil tanker facility, I believe it's still the only one in the nation that's shore power ready. So making an oil tanker facility shore power ready is a little bit different than making a container terminal. So not that many ports have that yet. We have it right here.